The NBA draft is a little over a month away, and the Heat can address their need for added size by adding a young player. But can they play alongside Bam Adebayo or fill a backup role? We look at some interesting draft prospects, including Zach Edey, Kel'el Ware, and Kyle Filipowski, and assess their future in Miami on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, you are Locked On Heat, your everyday podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making us your first listen every day, Monday to Friday. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, with David Ramil, both of us credentialed Heat media members. And we are excited to begin our Blue Notebook NBA Draft Prep series. On at least one episode each week between now and the draft at the end of June, we'll be diving into the scouting reports on a bunch of prospects that we're going to organize by major questions and themes. So today, we're going to be looking at big men in the draft who can help move Bam Adebayo to power forward, since that's been a talking point for a while now. The prospects we're covering today are Kel'el Ware, Kyle Fillipowski, Yves Missi, Daron Holmes II, and Zach Edey. So we'll discuss the things that we like about each prospect, the things that concern us about them, get into some player comps before deciding which one would best fit in a lineup with Bam at power forward. It's our Blue Notebooks. Let's jump in.
That's what I'm doing. I'm taking 10 blue notebooks with me to Malibu with my wife. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. 10 blue notebooks to Malibu. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. 10 blue notebooks to Malibu.
My life.
David, let's start with Kel'el Ware.
Never gets old.
It never gets old. It's such a good. It's one of the best things I've ever done. We'll start with Kel'el Ware, Indiana center, the guy who you took in our mock offseason with the 15th pick. What do you like the most about him?
Size and stretchability. I think the fact that he can shoot from beyond the perimeter, unlimited attempts, but the fact that he can, block shots, be a rim protector while also, what was it? We talked about a 3-and-B protector, like a guy who could shoot threes but block shots at the rim, and as such could be a complementary player to either back up Bam or kind of play alongside him in some lineups too. So I think he's a good project. He's young. And that's kind of where I'm leaning there. I think he's just got a guy with plenty of upside and also already proven tangible skills out on the court.
I think of everybody that we're going to talk to today, he's probably has the highest upside. I think that's fair. I think he also might have the lowest floor. He's 7 foot. He measured out in the combine with a 7'4" wingspan, which is enormous. He's only 20 years old. So you love all of that stuff, man. And he's a pogo stick. The guy's super athletic. And the mechanic, like the three-point shooting, limited attempts. He only took 40-something three-pointers total last year in college. Made it at a pretty good rate. But you watch it, the mechanics look good, right? It's a little slow, but he's a center. They're not supposed to be Steph Curry lightning fast. But the mechanics look good, and his jumper looks good. He's also a very willing passer. I think of all the prospects that we're going to talk about today, he's either the best or tied for the best passer out of the group. Really willing high-low passer. Like, he's not making insane reads, but because of his height, he's able to kind of get those passes over the top. And so I think that's obviously very helpful. And then the blocks and the athleticism that helps him get those blocks and all of those things are really helpful too. Is there a big concern that you have with Ware?
That he won't be able to incorporate these skills at an NBA level. And I mean, maybe that's just a generic thing, but he has all these things that he's done at the collegiate level, but I just don't know that against superior speed and competition, whether or not they'll stand out to the same degree. And we've seen plenty of guys that are fine athletically at the collegiate level, but that doesn't necessarily translate into any actual skill. Like, you have to have one thing that you're at least dominant at, and I don't see that from Kel'el.
Yeah, and against the most dominant competition, he wasn't all that productive. I mean, in 2 games against Purdue, because they were in the same conference, he had 5 points and 11 points, and that was against Zach Edey, who we're going to talk about later, who's the most dominant player in college basketball. Granted, it's going to be a different sport at the NBA level, but you would have liked to
Yes.
see more production from him. And that's a common refrain from draft analysts who talk about where, to me, I worry if that 3-point shot isn't elite, I don't know what he's going to do, to your point,
That's
David,
fair.
because
Yeah.
he liked to go. They worked him a lot in the post in Indiana, and I don't know if that's because he likes to go into those post ups. To me, it looked a little bit more like a function of the offense that Mike Woodson had there. It's just like, hey, we're going to run a lot of stuff through the post. You're 7 feet tall. Guess what, buddy? You're in charge of this.
You're in it.
Yeah. So, but the post ups were not good. He's got very inconsistent touch near the basket. I mean, he was airballing a few of these things. He floats away from the basket in the post. He has no real move other than spin and float away from it, which is not going to fly. Like, we've seen Bam Adebayo try to incorporate post moves because he kind of has done the same thing early in his career. And so I don't think that didn't bode well for me. And then even the block shots, a lot of against the backboard blocks, which is cool, and they always look cool, and they make loud noises, and people like that, but it's a sign that you got beat on defense.
That's fair.
And that's an issue. I don't mind a few of those chase down blocks in transition and stuff like that, but when you're constantly getting your blocks off the backboard, that to me is an indication of a problem. And then he just wants to swat the bleep out of that ball, man. Like, there is no keeping the ball in bounds, Bill Russell style. Like, he's just trying to send this thing into the 17th row over and over again. He just likes the sound of the noise that it makes. And I'd like him to keep that a little under control, keep these things in bounds so that they can actually, because the best thing about a block shot is it acts essentially as a turnover, but when he blocks them, it doesn't really do that. And so those are my biggest concerns with the block shots. It's a little bit of an empty stat to me.
No, that's all fair. I can see that a little. I wouldn't say Whiteside like, but you know what, the concern is to get that block and be demonstrative about it, as opposed to creating a turnover and things of that sort. So I totally see that from him as well. And I don't know if he's at that point. And you could say he's only 20 years old, so you totally understand why you want to make a big play. And a block is certainly an emotional moment, but you kind of almost would prefer, especially within Heat culture, to kind of just do yeoman's work. Is you get the block and you're just quiet about it, and you just look for the outlet pass to get that next possession going.
He needs to get stronger. He gets absolutely no movement against even smaller guys when he has them in the post. He does get bullied off his spot quite a bit. The rebounding rate is above average, but not probably where you want it to be for somebody with this size in general. But he's 20. And so I guess the idea is, hey, look at the frame, do all your research, see if this guy can get bigger and stronger. And if you feel pretty good about it, then that's something worth taking. And then maybe he does start to live up to some of those comps to somebody like Miles Turner, who's just compared to a lot right now. Let's go into the comps right now. I don't see Miles Turner. I think Miles Turner is way stronger than Kel'el Ware is. I think Turner was stronger and more physical coming out of Texas way back when.
I don't know about that. No. At Texas,
No?
he was kind of undersized, not undersized, just underdeveloped. He was like not NBA ready body and things of that sort.
Fair enough, but you've got to be able to get to that level. To me, I see him more as like a Jaren Jackson Jr. type, and that's sort of reaching for that high ceiling that I was talking about before, where maybe he's a Jaren Jackson Jr. light, but to me, he's Jaren Jackson Jr. playing like LaMarcus Aldridge. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's just what he reminds me of. Like, offensively, a lot of LaMarcus Aldridge stuff, but not necessarily executing on that stuff. Like, the shooting percentages are not where you want them to be if you're playing a lot out of the mid post and stuff like that, like Aldridge did. But I don't know that if you're talking about a guy who could play next to Bam and move Bam to power forward, this guy is not going to be able to hold up against other centers at the NBA level for a few years. And that's why I kind of had the Jaren Jackson Jr. thing. Maybe an off-ball guy who can get those chase down blocks and swat those shots and do those things, but he's going to have to be coming over from the weak side help position and stuff like that. That's kind of my comp for him.
Fair enough.
Did you have a comp, or you're good?
I did not. No. Yeah, right. That's fine.
All right, so let's move on to our next player, Yves Missi out of Baylor. But before we get to that, let's have a word from our sponsors.
Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn is a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. I've been there having to find somebody to hire. It's a pain. You're just stuck on kind of a mountain of resumes. You're looking at different people, checking references, having to schedule interviews. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses to get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Imagine that, getting it done within a day. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire somebody. And that's why they're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Sometimes you get stuck. You're not sure how to frame it. Guess what? LinkedIn takes care of that for you. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Yours should be next. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. We'll be doing these blue notebooks at least once a week. We're talking about some of the big men in this year's draft who can help move Bam Adebayo to power forward. We're moving on now to Yves Missi out of Baylor. I really like this guy, David. Like, this to me is the guy who jumped off the screen to me in terms of just physical ability and the spectacle of him. I do literally have more of a yellow notebook here, but 6'11", 7'2", wingspan, 225 pounds, 19 years old, has been playing basketball organized basketball for under 3 years. Another one of these high upside guys, and just a downhill athlete who gets after the basket, a great finisher, extremely physical, sets good screens, a lot of things that I like. Got that spicy pea spin on his menu. I kind of like that too. What do you like about him?
Supremely physical, incredible athlete, NBA ready. You know, he's a guy who could probably get a couple of minutes here and there right away, just because he's going to bring incredible energy and physicality. At the same time, though, if you're looking at weaknesses, I just don't know whether or not he has an actual translatable skill that could play alongside Bam Adebayo. So you know what? He could be a guy that you could put in there. I'm curious to see how that fit plays out. But in terms of like a long-term project, he might be a great fit. I just don't know he's a great fit for Miami.
Yeah, that's sort of where my hang up with him is. Like, I love everything about him, but can he play next to Bam? Because there's no three-point shot to speak of here. The free throw rate is pretty good. He was involved in the three-point shooting stuff at the draft combine, but I really don't care that much about that. Like, a lot of people are making big fuss out of some of these numbers. I don't. You're shooting in an empty gym. That doesn't mean anything to me. He's a pure finisher. He does not look to pass at all. No. He could do like the dribble handoff stuff on the perimeter, but he's not. And that might just be a function of Baylor's offense. I don't really know. And again, he's only been playing organized basketball for a little bit. There is a basketball feel there, so maybe one day he can be, but he's a pure finisher in the strictest sense of the word. Defensively, wasn't asked to switch a whole lot, but did show flashes of that. I think he'd probably be able to do that at the NBA level with obviously some coaching and stuff like that. Yeah. To me, the blocks, again, like where the numbers are big, he leaves his feet way too much. This is stuff that can be coached out of him, but he leaves his feet way too much. He's going to be foul prone. He's going to bite on every single pump fake at the NBA level, because I guess in college they don't know how to pump fake. It was something that struck me. That would be the first thing on the scouting report, is just pump fake this guy, and nobody did it. But whatever, that's a whole other thing. The comp there is for Jalen Duren, and I think that's accurate. Jalen Duren probably a little bit more polished even at this stage of Jalen Duren's career than Missi is, but that's to be expected.
Duren was 18 when he was drafted too. Yeah,
that's true, but he didn't play basketball for a much longer time. Let's do Zach Edey. Let's get into Zach Edey here.
Polarizing.
Very, very polarizing. What do you like about him?
He's 7'4". I hate to say it. Like, I know it sounds really simplistic. I don't know. I see him and he's so slow and it just looks plodding to me. It's like I watch these highlights and then I flip the channel to watch the playoff games, and the speed is just so different. I'm just thinking to myself, there's no way he can play in the NBA. Like, as much as he's dominated college, it's college. There are 17-year-old wet behind the ears kids that can't do anything well. And yeah, he could dunk all over. He's 7'4". So I just kind of get stuck on that. And after that, I just like, man, touch is great. Like, he has really nice, improved finishing skills around the basket. He's got that little hook shot. He can get over anybody. Again, 7'4". But man, can you just put him in there and watch him kind of slowly walk up the court at a snail's pace in comparison to everybody else? Like, if Miami's transition defense is bad now, imagine what it would be like with him out there. So I just don't see it.
Well, the there's improved mobility stuff in the mobility drills at the combine. That was a big story that came out of Chicago. So maybe you hope that he can kind of get out. But you're right, his straight line speed's never going to really be there. Even if he's able to move a little side to side, like the straight line speed is still going to be an issue. And I do agree with you on that. Like, could Yao Ming essentially, even and probably a less athletic Yao Ming, exist in today's NBA? You know, like that's sort of what we're talking about here. And even Yao Ming, towards the tail end of his career, had a hard time kind of staying on the court with the way that the NBA was trending.
The tail end. He'd already carved out a Hall of Fame career before that. Zach Edey, not so much, you know.
The thing I like about him is he is 7'4" with a 7'10" wingspan, and he's 300 pounds, and there's nothing you could do about it. And he knows how to use his size. The guy drew, like, he was at the line 10, 11 times a game last year. And so he knows how to draw fouls, which is great. And I think that part is going to translate to the NBA because there's not a whole lot of NBA players who are 7'4" with a 7'10" wingspan. And I think he's still be able to get to those hook shots and things like that. I like him as a player. To me, I know exactly what he's going to be. He's big Ivica Zubac. He's just a big version of that. And there's a use for that. He's a skilled Boban Marjanovic. Like there's a utility for that player. Is that player a lottery pick? To me, no. I need that. I need a lottery pick to have the potential to be on the court at all times. But if you're drafting Edey with the intention of, we just have this really big guy on our bench who we can use periodically, then that's a great pick. But maybe more in like the 20s than versus like the 15th pick would be my concern if I were Miami, especially if some of these guys with a higher upside are still on the board. Do I have any other? My only other Edey note is like the hands are great.
Yes,
he's a good passer. He knows the game. High IQ player, uses all of his strengths to his strength, and then and I think he's very. He acknowledges his weaknesses and he tries his best to cover up for him. And he did that at Purdue for a couple of years.
I hope it translates.
For sure. And look, if the Heat were to draft him, it wouldn't be a horrible pick. It wouldn't be much upside to that pick. It would be, okay, at least now we just have a really big guy on the roster that we didn't have before. But I don't see him as a guy who necessarily projects as a long-term starter. Like, he's not like an every down running back, you know. He's not an every down pass rusher. He's just sort of a utility kind of guy. Let's move on to. I
just want somebody to pop, and he doesn't pop, you know.
Right. Quickly, let's do Daron Holmes, the second center out of Dayton.
That's your guy.
This is my guy. So a fringe first round pick, according to most draft boards. He's 6'9" with a 7'1" wingspan, which was a little bit surprising coming out of the combine. That bodes well for him, like surprising in a good way. 236 pounds. He's 21 years old, so I think he's the oldest one here that's not Zach Edey. Extremely productive, 20 points per game at Dayton. He shot almost 39% on 2.5 3-point attempts per game, decent volume, 2.1 blocks per game, 2.6 assists per game. This guy, to me, the elevator pitch is Naz Reid. That's what I was watching him, and I just can't help. This guy is a face-up scorer. He could score in every which way. Extremely fluid with the ball on the perimeter. Showed a lot of instances of dribbling from like half court to the basket, full court transition stuff with the ball in his hands the entire time. Really good rim roller. Gets to the basket pretty aggressively. Can dunk with force. And has a nice little face-up game and shoots threes really well, really comfortably. I think you could just use him in a lot of spots offensively, and then defensively, there were moments on tape where I had to rewind it and be like, oh, this guy really knows what he's doing defensively. Like, quick recognition, high basketball IQ. I read some of the scouting reports from people who actually like do reporting on this and everything. Everybody says high basketball IQ player, very good defensively, knows where he's supposed to be. And then my favorite part, the trash talking, the fieriness. It bursts. It comes off the screen when you watch this guy. I could see him in a Miami Heat uniform pretty easily. I like this guy a lot, David.
I just see how undersized. Like the skills are there. There's a lot that you can't appreciate about his game, but the fact that he's undersized, to me, Naz Reid's much bigger than he is. So I just don't see that comparison as an even one. To me, when I look at it, my concern, if I'm looking at a negative thing here, it's that he's going to be another Precious Achiuwa. And the idea of running all these BAMs out there at the same time might sound good, but what was it that the Toronto Raptors, what is it, Project 6'5" or whatever they call it, right. Where it's just like every player on the roster is over 6'5". it sounds great in premise, but it doesn't actually translate well.
He's got kind
While
of the same
skills are
size as
there,
Naz Reid, by the way. They're both 6'9", 6'10", with a 7'1" wingspan. Like Reid's probably a half-inch
I thought
taller.
Reid was at 6'11". Yeah, I thought Reid was 6'11".
He's listed at 6'10". So,
Oh, well, there you have it. Okay, maybe it's just the hair then, I guess.
But to the
either way,
point, but to your point though, Bam is already undersized. I don't know. Does this make you undersized if you basically have like a 6'9" guy in Bam and another 6'9", 6'10"-ish guy in Holmes, or maybe, you know, I think that's fair. Like you kind of would want like a real 7-footer, especially when you kind of compare it to these other guys. And none of these guys, like, or I should say, Holmes probably doesn't project as a full-time center the way that Naz Reid is in a full-time center. So that would be the issue.
It's fine too. And in a sense, though, yeah, in a sense, you put him at the 4 and slide Nico down if that's what you have to do, and you still have more overall rebounding toughness and size in a lineup. If he winds up emerging as a starter, and I don't think he will be right away, but you don't necessarily need a 7-footer. You need somebody who's going to be challenging for rebounds, who could potentially block shots and things of that sort.
Protect the rim.
And I think he fits the bill. Yeah, protect the rim to some degree. I think he fits the bill. And I know that you're high on his potential and his upside and what he's shown at the collegiate level. Again, sometimes I wonder whether or not he's going to be the right fit alongside Bam. But that might be tomorrow's problem. For today, he might still be an impactful player. He could come off the bench and immediately play alongside Jaime Jaquez or whoever else comes off the bench and following this offseason.
To me, the knock against him is that he played at Dayton, so that people don't know if he's going to be able to handle top competition, and I think he can. Yeah. I think he's actually more ready than Ware, probably more ready than Missi, probably.
Well, I mean, the player of the year over the last 2 years is a guy that we're talking about not even being like a first-round pick in Zach Edey. So I think that kind of tells you
first-round pick.
No, I know, but I'm saying like in terms of like translatable skill and long-term project, you said a skilled Boban Marjanovic. Like that's not exactly what you want to hear from the 2-time player of the year.
And I also said Ivica Zubac. For the record. No, I think Edey, to me, Edey and Holmes are the guys we talked about are the most NBA ready of this group. Like they have the most direct translatable skill. Holmes is going to be able to walk in and score and bring energy. Bobby Portis, Naz Reid, straight from that same cloth. He's like he'll be part of that whatever club that they've put together. He'll be part of that club. He'll be a card-carrying member of it. Edey will be the card-carrying member of, hey, we're really big. You can't get rid of us, and we'll have a job in the NBA for 10 years because we're bigger than 0.1% of humans on the planet, and you just have to have us. And so there you go. We have one more guy to get to, and then we'll discuss which one of all the guys that we talked about is the best fit next to Bam Adebayo and who could potentially come to the Miami Heat and move Bam Adebayo to power forward. We'll do that next.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes you just need somebody to talk to about something that's been eating at you, or maybe it's just been building up over time. You want a fresh perspective, not somebody who's got a biased perspective. You don't want to talk to a coworker perhaps, or maybe even a family member or partner. You want to talk to somebody who's an expert who can give you the kind of help that you've been looking for. So you're probably looking for a therapist. And if that's the case, then you probably want to give BetterHelp a try because it's so entirely convenient. It's online. And it's designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Whatever hours you need in order to squeeze in this much needed therapy, they'll accommodate you. They'll match you up with the right therapist. And if your schedule changes for whatever reason, guess what? It's just a matter of making the switch online. No added fee, nothing, no problems with it at all. Smooth. I've had a friend who used BetterHelp because I was advertising it here. And I told him exactly what I'm telling you right now. He needed to change his schedule. He couldn't see the same therapist anymore. Bam. It was just that easy. So if you're looking to get something off your chest, you're looking for somebody to talk to, go with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today. You get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. 5-star ratings and review on the podcast app. Always appreciated. If you're still watching us on YouTube, hit the like button, ring the bell to get notified when new episodes go up. We'll be joined tomorrow by Chris Manning from Locked On Cavs to talk about in-depth the Cavaliers' perspective of a Donovan Mitchell trade. So you're not going to want to miss that. A lot of really great. We already recorded that, so we got a lot of really good intel, really interesting stuff there. So check that out. Last one, and we're going to blow through this one. Kyle Filipowski I don't see him as a fit. We included him on this list because he's a 3-point shooting big, but he's 6'10" with a 6'10" wingspan. So he's got that average wingspan, which was a little disappointing at the combine. 230 pounds, 230 pounds, 20 years old. He shot 35% on 3 3-point attempts per game, nearly 3 assists per game, 1.5 blocks, 1.1 steals. Fluid ball handler, good 3-point shooting upside, mostly a perimeter-based face-up kind of player.
Kel'el
On
Ware
offense,
2.0.
tries hard on defense, but he's not a rim protector. He doesn't really do much at the rim. He plays defense the way that everybody at Duke plays defense. Scrappy, dirty, drawing charges. That's what they do. Kelly Olynyk, very much like Kelly Olynyk, and it's a great comp. There's that, but not a rim protector in the slightest, and even smaller than Olynyk. And honestly, I hear all these things, and I'm like, you already kind of have a better Kyle Filipowski at home in Nikola Jovic. So I just don't really see it as a fit. So if you agree with me there, we'll just kind of take him off the table and then move on to the other 4 guys.
Yeah, no, I think you have to. I think he's just not the right fit for Miami. If you're looking for rugged size and rim protection and everything else that comes with that, he does not provide that.
Yeah, most people named Kyle don't. All right. Shots on Kyle.
Kyle Lowry did.
It's a different kind of size. That's right. Which one of these guys that we've talked about then is the one who can not only play with Bam, because I think we already have a guy who could play with Bam, and Nikola Jovic, right? You got your young 20-year-old who could play with Bam. But in terms of the question of if we want Bam playing at power forward, the way that Udonis Haslem talked about on First Take or whatever program it was that he said that, and a lot of fans kind of see Bam moving to power forward, that's a way to incorporate more size. Which one of the guys, now that we've kind of gone through these scouting reports, do you think has the best chance of turning into a player who can move Bam to power forward?
Oh, if any of them really match that capability. I'm kind of feeling a little bit lower on Ware after watching a little bit more film on him and talking with you about it. And then the way you sell Holmes makes it sound more interesting. And I'll be completely 100% honest. I did not watch a lot of him because I saw he was projected in many places to be a mid-6 second round pick. And so given that, I thought he's not going to be available. He's not going to be an option for Miami at 15. But that doesn't mean that they haven't made a surprise before or traded down, even though it's just very unlikely in Heat history. If you're looking at the players that we're talking about today, I still think Ware is probably that guy, but there are limitations. No pick is going to be perfect. I don't know that any of these guys are going to be a slam dunk at 15 that you could say, you know what? He put him in there, and right from day one, he'll be, if not a starter, a guy who could be a starter. Like, I think we had those conversations with Jaquez early on. Like, it was just a matter of time before we saw what he could do, and we're like, oh, this guy is as a rotation player. We know he's going to get 20-something minutes per game. The shot wasn't falling, and then it did, and then it didn't.
Where like none of the, I think the only guys on this list that I think could make an immediate impact are Edey and Holmes, and they're on the opposite sides of the spectrum, right? Edey's almost too big, and then Holmes is perhaps small, not quite up to where you want to be. Kel'el Ware, to me, if he pans out, that's the guy. That's the guy. But it's a big if. And I think he's probably a couple of years away from even getting to the point of being on the floor consistently with Bam. Like, this is not somebody to me who moves Bam off of, like, if I'll put it this way, if Ware and Bam are on the court together, Bam's still guarding centers because Ware's not strong enough and he's not even close.
It's fair.
He's tall, but he's not strong enough. He's not even close. The guy, like I said, the guy can't move small guards off of the post in college yet. Like, he needs a lot of work.
I mean, this is a long-term. Yeah, you know, I was going to say maybe in some ways he could be like PJ Brown, who was actually taller than Alonzo Mourning in that sense. Like, he was the guy who was the weak side help defender. He was the guy.
Yeah, if that's what you want. In there. But the thing is, you wanted Alonzo guarding the rim, and I think you actually want Bam playing the off-ball thing. I think that's where he'd be most versatile because Bam's the versatile one. He's the one that could switch and guard Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and stuff like that. If you're picking at number 15, it's okay to take a guy like Kel'el Ware, understanding that it's going to be a long-term pick, but you just also have to understand that it's going to be a project here. This is a 2-year, 3-year project, and not somebody who can help maximize this current title window. And that's fine. He's a rookie. Yep. That's okay. Yep. But you have to have that expectation going into it. Of all the guys who I think could actually move Bam, and this is going to sound really strange, move Bam to power forward right away, it's Edey. Because Edey can't play power forward. He would be playing center. And if you played him in a lineup with Bam, I'll ask you this simple question. Does Miami's defense get better? with Edey and Bam in the front court with, let's call it Jimmy Butler and whoever else?
No, I
You
don't
don't think so?
I no, I don't. I think you'll be giving up a lot more threes because he's just too immobile. And look, I think you have some help, a backline defender in that sense, but I think they're going to find ways to exploit it. Maybe in some ways you could say, you know what, he's protecting the rim. You've got enough perimeter defense, and basically you'd have to switch your defense to give up by design the mid-range shot. And if that's the case, maybe it works out.
And fewer threes, which the Heat have had a problem with recently. So you'd be taking away stuff from him. I think it would be better. I'm with you though. I don't think it would be dramatically better to the point where if I'm Miami, I want to find a way to turn our number 5 defense into the number 1 defense in the league. Like that to me is the most scalable thing that we've got. And I think there's ways to do it. And one of the ways might be creating that optionality to move Bam to power forward. And a way to do that could be to draft Edey and kind of rejigger things. But I also think if you're going to build your defense around Bam, then you probably want 1 through 5 to be switchable. You probably want to be as switchable as possible because Bam's the anchor of that defense, and that's his greatest skill. And last year they played so much of the year in drop defense, which wasn't necessarily Bam's skill until they got to the playoffs and they went back to the switch defense against Boston because they had to. But you would like to see them 1 through 5 have those guys who can do it, and they can't really do it right now. So to me, I think maybe Miami's best way to improve their defense is to actually draft defensive talent on the perimeter, not necessarily a guy who can bump Bam off of into the power forward spot for now. There's also free agency and trades. There's other ways to go get that player if you want to move Bam to power forward. You don't have to do it in the draft. But if you were trying to do it in the draft, then maybe Kel'el Ware, to me, is the only guy who really does that. And he doesn't do it now. And he might do it 2 or 3 years from now. So that's kind of where I landed on all of this. That said, I still like Holmes a lot.
What about Edey? Where, if you had to rank him in terms of likely or fit in Miami, I think we would say likelihood of Miami drafting him and kind of fit in Miami, you would think it would be Ware first, Holmes second.
I think I don't know. I don't really know where they want to go with this, but to me, if they were going to take Edey, it would be an organizational commitment to say like, we're going to play like this now, or we're going to play like this for 10 to 15 minutes a game. And by the way, like Edey can walk in and
comp. You made the Zubac comp, and what his defense on Nikola Jokic has been the best in the league over the past few years, like in terms of points per possession. Like he might just be big enough to be that obstruction. And you look at what worked for Minnesota, a team that was built, as Nikola Jokic said, to defeat Denver. Maybe it's just go big as hell, and you know what? You let them.
I like having
everything
the
else
utility of it, like the optionality, the utility of it. Like this is a guy who brings an NBA ready skill. I just think that. Like I almost feel like it sounds like we're knocking Edey. I just think we're being realistic about it, and drafting him would be a very big change from what Miami has done. But to your point, maybe they should do it. Maybe you should go big because you've got Joel Embiid coming back. You've got Giannis. Like Edey is a Giannis wall if he wants to be, right? Mm-hmm. Like to have that as an option that you've never had, and maybe he doesn't start. Maybe he just comes off the bench, and that's okay. Like that gives you a different look in that second unit. I don't know. You could play him. Kevin Love can play with him. So because at least he could shoot. And then if you have Edey there, Bam would be forced to maybe shoot a little bit more. If they took Edey at 15, I would talk myself into it. But more than anything, I would be very intrigued to see what else Miami was going to do, because it would be a little bit of a shift in concept of what this team has done over the years. And maybe that's the right thing, but that's, I think, part of what Miami needs to figure out this offseason is what do we want to be next year?
I'm getting excited thinking about the prospect. If you move Tyler to the backup role, if you want, again, not make that huge trade,
assuming the roster is the roster,
right. Tyler as a backup, Kevin Love at the 4. That's like a big size. That's a pretty good backup unit there, like a secondary unit that it would really, I think,
and by the way,
damage. But
Edey would be a scorer right away too. That hook shot ain't going anywhere.
Who's going to stop him?
Nobody.
It's going to be a goaltend. Like I can imagine everybody who tries to block his shot is going to wind up.
And he keeps the ball high too. That's the other thing is what you do when you're, and he's learned this. I mean, he's been in Purdue for a million years, so he's learned this. Like it does feel like he's been in college for so long, but he keeps the ball up high, and when he keeps the ball up high, it's higher than almost anybody else. Like if it's Giannis or Embiid or these other big players, like obviously they'll be able to contest it, but against backups,
Porzingis.
Yeah, Porzingis. I mean, yeah. So like those guys can contest it, but most guys can't. Like that shot will be there. And so I don't know. I just he's not. He is what he is, and what he is, I think will be pretty good. It will be playing in the NBA for a very long time, but I don't think he's ever going to be. He's not going to be big though, and MVP caliber the way that Joel Embiid and Jokic are. Like he's not that, but
No.
he'll be Zubac, and Zubac is
it's
a
a
bigger Zubac with more touch, and that's
a
a good
cyclical return to just a bigger body. Like the idea was, oh, let's get the unicorn. Let's get a guy who can shoot, who can pass, who can do all these things. Now it's just like, you know what? Maybe we just need somebody who's just big, just damn big, and throw him out there.
At the same time, they could go with Ware and say, we're okay taking the project, and we really like the potential here, and we're going to bet on that in our coaching staff. And Malik Allen, who Eric Spoelstra told me is the best big man coach in the NBA, well, here's a great mold of clay in Kel'el Ware. I also really like Missi, man. Like, if they took Missi, I think that guy could be playing backup center for you right away.
Yeah.
And develop into that role. He might not ever be the starter next to Bam, but if Bam eventually does develop a 3-point shot, then maybe one day Missi can become your rim protecting center. Like there's optionality there. So I think
the draft, it's wild. It's chaos. No one knows what's going to happen. It's great.
Just don't draft the guy named Kyle. No more Kyle Fillipowski. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on your podcast app. Another Blue Notebook coming to you next week.